From humble beginnings as a simple fiber crop to a global symbol of rebellion and debate, the story of cannabis is one of invention, fear, politics, and culture. Today, on Bellows From Beyond, we explore how this single plant became one of the most controversial in modern history. Cannabis, scientifically known as Cannabis sativa, first grew wild in Central Asia. Over thousands of years, people learned to use every part of it: stalks for rope and sailcloth, seeds for food and oil, and, in some regions, the flowers for medicine or ritual. In ancient China and India, healers prescribed cannabis to ease pain or help sleep. Across the Middle East and Africa, it spread through trade routes, finding new uses and meanings wherever it went. By the 1600s, hemp had reached Europe and the American colonies. Farmers in Virginia, Massachusetts, and Connecticut were even required by law to grow it. To early settlers, hemp was ordinary, a practical crop, not a cause for controversy. Everything changed in the early 20th century. Mexican immigrants introduced the practice of smoking marijuana. At first, it spread quietly through border towns, jazz clubs, and working-class communities. But as the nation faced economic hardship and new immigration waves, newspapers began linking marijuana with crime and social unrest. Racial stereotypes and cultural fears turned a once useful plant into a political target. By 1931, 29 states had already outlawed cannabis in some form. It was no longer just a crop, it was becoming a symbol. In 1937, Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act. Though written as a tax measure, it effectively criminalized possession and transfer of the plant. Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, led a campaign portraying marijuana as a cause of insanity and violence. Films like Reefer Madness spread those fears to moviegoers nationwide. Even during World War II, when hemp was briefly revived for rope and uniforms, the plant's reputation never recovered. By the late 1940s, cannabis had been recast as a symbol of moral decay. After World War II, America entered the Cold War, an age of order and control. Cannabis, used by jazz musicians and beat poets, quietly symbolized freedom. Then came the 1960s. Music, protests, and new ideas swept through youth culture. To that generation, marijuana represented rebellion. In 1970, the Controlled Substances Act classified cannabis as a Schedule I drug, the strictest level, with no accepted medical use. President Nixon's new Drug Enforcement Administration expanded enforcement. Arrests rose, penalties hardened, yet the counterculture held on. Cannabis had become more than a plant. It was a dividing line between generations. Through the 1970s and 80s, a new message filled the airwaves. News stories and public service ads warned that marijuana was a gateway drug. Images of dazed teenagers and broken families shaped public fear. Cannabis was no longer a plant. It was a symbol of danger. But behind the headlines, researchers were curious. Could the same plant hold medical promise? Some doctors and patients began to believe so. Quietly, the long shift from fear to curiosity had begun. In 1996, California voters approved Proposition 215, the first law legalizing medical marijuana. Other states soon followed. By the early 2000s, researchers had identified the body's endocannabinoid system, natural receptors that interact with cannabis compounds. The discovery confirmed what many patients already believed. The plant held real therapeutic potential. In 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first to legalize recreational use for adults. Supporters called it progress. Critics warned of new risks. For the first time in decades, cannabis was entering the light again. So, how did cannabis become the most controversial plant on Earth? It changed roles, from industrial fiber to forbidden drug. It challenged cultural norms, fueled rebellion, and became a political symbol. As legalization spreads, the debate continues. Freedom versus control. Medicine versus morality. Profit versus principle. More than half of U.S. states now allow legal cannabis, but federal law still forbids it. In some places, it's still a crime. In others, it's a booming industry. As we look back, one truth becomes clear. Cannabis didn't become controversial by chance. It became a mirror, reflecting fear, politics, rebellion, and the constant tug-of-war between personal freedom and control. For every era that sought to suppress it, another rose to question why. And as science and society evolve, the debate over this plant, once demonized, now debated, continues to shape law, culture, and identity. Perhaps the story of cannabis isn't really about the plant at all, but about us. The story of cannabis is still unfolding, written in new laws, new research, and the voices of those who challenge old beliefs. What once sparked fear now sparks debate, and perhaps understanding. History doesn't end here, it just changes shape. This is Bellows From Beyond, exploring the truths that time tried to hide. From ancient rope and medicine to modern dispensaries and politics, cannabis has traveled a long road. Its story isn't just about a plant, it's about the societies that shaped it. As research grows and laws evolve, the controversy reminds us how powerful fear and belief can be. Perhaps, in understanding its past, we also understand ourselves. This has been How Did Cannabis Become the Most Controversial Plant? Presented by Bellows From Beyond. If you enjoyed this journey through history, like, subscribe, and join us again for more stories that echo from the past into the beyond.